Before I begin talking this morning about the life of Richard, our longtime parishioner, I thought I should first read to you from his own words in a letter that he wrote to the editor of the Reporter-Dispatch in White Plains on Flag Day in 1970, nearly 50 years ago, which I think will tell you a whole lot about who Richard has always been. I will quote directly from that letter. Since tomorrow is Flag Day, Americans, including myself, should ask, just what does a flag mean? Why does it evoke such emotion and controversy? Just why is a piece of cloth such an important symbol in the minds and hearts of men? First of all, man, from the time he developed enough intelligence to realize that he was an entity in this world, that he had an identity, a name, a place which belonged to him, whether it was a cave or a palace, whether it measured 100 square feet or 10,000 acres. Man came to know that he owned something. The size of his possession did not matter. What did matter, however, was that he developed a sense of what we now call sovereignty. And man liked his sovereignty. He took pride in his ability to maintain, develop, and protect it for his own good and the good of those who relied upon him for their own security. Somehow, he felt that this ownership had to be made identifiable wherever he went by some symbol, sign, or color. Hence there evolved family crests, coats of arms, banners, and flags. These marks designated territories, states, and countries, and with them went the record of how these boundaries were formed. Richard goes on to write, so we see that a flag is as important to the nature of man's identity as is the name on his mailbox. Those who feel no pride in their name, their street, their town, or their school certainly can feel no pride in their country, for they are really one and the same. He goes on to say, the United States has provided more opportunity, more freedom, the greatest security, and the highest standard of living to more people in the shortest amount of time than in any other country on earth. Yes, tomorrow, Flag Day, will mean what it says to me. My ancestors did not travel to these shores on the Mayflower, but I certainly understand what I am and where I belong and what I will fight for. And I know that I have a country, and what is more, my country knows that it has me. So in the course of the more than year that I've known Richard, I think this writing captures as much as anything who Richard was. Those of you who know him well and longer than I probably know that even more. Richard was born in the Methodist Hospital of New York on December 24th, Christmas Eve, 1929, nearly 90 years ago. His family name of Hadad is Syrian for Smith, as his dad was of Syrian birth and immigrated to Ellis Island at the age of 7 in 1904. Richard's mother was of Lebanese descent, and both parents were raised in the Orthodox Christian faith. Although baptized Orthodox, Richard was confirmed Episcopalian at the age of 13 at St. Peter's Church in Port Chester in 1943. After graduating from the Brunswick School for Boys in 1949, Richard right away enlisted in the Army and subsequently volunteered to serve in the infantry during the Korean War in 1951 and 1952. He fought there on the Eastern Front during 1952. He came ashore at Incheon, South Korea in December of 1951. I have actually laid eyes upon and held the tattered and folded copy still stained and crease-marked, of the 23rd Psalm that Richard's mother gave him to carry in the breast pocket of his uniform. The first day I met Richard in September of last year, he told me how that was given to him by his mother, and he believed that it protected him in time of battle. There were many battles in which Richard saw many folks around him die, and he believed that somehow he had some protection as a result of his mother giving him the 23rd Psalm. Soon after I learned of Richard's cancer diagnosis nearly a year ago, he and Lisa and I recited that psalm together from memory, just as we all recited it together here today. Richard's military honors include the Combat Infantryman's Badge, the Bronze Star Medal, the Korean Service Medal with 2 Bronze Campaign Stars, the United Nations Service Medal, National Defense Service Medal, Good Conduct Medal, the Republic of Korea Unit Citation, and the Conspicuous Service Cross. He is a lifetime member of the Combat Infantrymen's Association, the Korean War Veterans, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, as well as the American Legion. After leaving the Army, Richard opened an investment firm in Rockefeller Center, which continued for 25 years, and then opened an office on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, where he ran a real estate and investment business. In a newsletter from the Church of the Resurrection in Hopewell Junction from nearly 25 years ago, it is reported that Richard married Lisa there, where she was a parishioner, as had been her 2 sons, Jim and Eric. They had been baptized and confirmed there. Richard has 4 sons, Richard, Mitch, Steve, and Tom. 4 of Richard and Lisa's sons have served honorably in the military, 3 as officers in the Army and Marine Corps. Also, when I first got to know Richard, he told me of his early life and the love of Harley-Davidson motorcycles, and that he once rode his Harley 2,000 miles across the country in 4 days, traveling from Fort Hood, Texas to New York in 1949. I have made that same trek from time to time, having lived in Texas for the first 50 years of my life and traveling with my family, not on a Harley, but in a Suburban, that very same route. Never did it on a Harley, though, and that image was brought to my mind and brought a smile to my face as Richard and I prayed together the last few days of his life. What an honor for me it was to spend that time with him. One of the things that has stood out for me in getting to know Richard over the past year is the respect that he had for his father and the hard work and dedication of his father in raising a family from having nothing when coming to this country to owning a prospering business. Richard was speaking lovingly of his dad and told me that he was a good man, always treated his employees well, and was respected by everyone in his community. Those same values, I believe, were instilled and alive in Richard as well. Less than 2 weeks before his death, he said that he was praying that his sons would know that he loved them, was proud of them, and he prayed that they would know that he was always trying to do what was right for them. I told Richard that I somehow suspected that God would grant him that prayer request. So to Lisa and to all of Richard's family and loved ones, I would tell you this. As Christians, we know that Jesus Christ died, was buried, and rose again, that he surmounted death with life, sorrow with joy, and he triumphed over the emptiness of souls with an empty tomb. He is resurrected and is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And Richard in his life beyond this earth will be the same in heaven as on earth, and will be the same forever as he joins all who went before him, and the same when we all join him in our own eternity. Lives are like landscapes, often filled with such great beauty, but also sometimes cluttered with hardship and sadness. Today is one of those times of sadness. So to Lisa and Richard's loving family and friends, right now, hope seems rather elusive, such an infinite and forbidding distance away from us all. But we do live by a faith that is the assurance of all things hoped for. That hope is our inner bodily temple, and that there is a well that springs eternal from within us, a well that, although perhaps now dry for all of Richard's loved ones, it will burst forth again to quench our thirst and moisten our parched lips with its gushing, cleansing water, like the waters of our own baptism. So today we accompany Richard to the edge of mystery, to the borderland between the physical world and the heavenly kingdom, where he will claim his new true abode, waiting for all of us to come home with him to the place which we can't yet see, but which he now sees clearly, face to face with his God. When tears seem to be the only nourishment, and halted gasps the only escape from nothingness, this void of absence seems not yet to be conquerable. Not now, not for a while. To claim that something could right now fill the dungeon-like hole in the families inside of their hearts, I think is going to take a while. And I don't want to be too dismissive of the grief that you now suffer. But I will tell you that grief does not get the final word. It is only a rugged and rut-filled road on which we all travel from time to time. And although that road right now is so overwhelming, cluttered with the traffic of immeasurable pain and fear and doubt, the distance of that road, though now heavy and oppressive, will in fact be traveled as we again yearn to be near the source of our own being. That same God who created us will create us anew. It is hard now to imagine that the road will become less cluttered and less oppressive, but God is with all of you in your grief, walking that road, preparing the way ahead for your passage to a quieter place, a place where once again there will be seasons, there will be laughter, there will be light instead of darkness. The view of that place, as yet totally incomprehensible and blurred by the tears of your swollen eyes, will emerge only slowly. But emerge it will, because while God does not promise us immunity from pain, he does promise us pain's release, the infinite and ever-present love of God that conquers all pain. So my words and the words of all of your loved ones and the words of your friends, all so very well meant, will surely not be enough to comfort you completely now. Those words will only be noises that reach your outer ear. From that ear to the heart lies a path that only God can travel with you. He will not leave you alone there, just as he has not and will not leave Richard alone on his journey to that quiet heavenly home. Eventually we get strength to reach out far beyond the limitations of our own fragile and finite existence to our loving God, in whom all life is anchored. The gaping holes in your hearts can only begin to be healed by the tiniest of stitches of hope. They are just the minuscule beginnings. Those stitches are like the smallest of seeds in the forest that, covered over in new soil, will soon begin to rise majestic and sprout new life. Seeds in the forest, like a seed in a mother's womb, nurtured to a new life. A new creation will exist. Resurrection has occurred in heaven, and the holes in your heart will be repaired, if only one stitch at a time. Lisa, I pray that in the coming days, God walks with you. Richard, I pray that on your journey home, God is walking with you now as we all come here together today. And that God will walk with those of whom you have loved in your life and with whom you have shared your time on this earth. I pray that God give all of you peace and rest in the coming days.